So now on some corny cornbread. You know, there's a lot of cornbread recipes out there, but I think that if you make a good cornbread, you really don't need to put a half a stick of butter on each piece to make it moist enough to eat. So if you have to put all that cornbread, all that butter on your cornbread, think about getting a new recipe. This particular recipe, it's right off the back of one of these most cornbread, however you get it, has a recipe for cornbread on the back. Okay, and really I'm just following that one with the addition of adding, now I doubled this so I could put it in a big pan, with the addition of adding a can of creamed corn. Now, I'm not a big fan of creamed corn, not eating it by itself, but with this it works out pretty good. So really what this is it's 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of cornmeal, and 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And I'm going to give that just a quick stir here so that it doesn't clump. And then on top of that, there's a little spot here, 2 cups of milk. I use whole milk. You guys are going to bake, can't use non-fat. Okay, you need the fat. Alright, and on top of that fat, here's 2/3 of a cup of oil. This is canola oil. And then I had to take the eggs outside and show them who's boss, because they needed to be slightly beaten. So these are beaten eggs. I had to beat them up outside. Anyway, for whatever that's worth. Alright, and then basically you just incorporate that in there. Now, the other thing to this is sometimes you get gritty cornbread. Now, if you like gritty cornbread, don't listen. But if you don't like gritty cornbread, one of the little tricks to it is after you stir this right here, and you get now that's pretty good right there, and that's what the thing calls for. But now, do I have a spoon? Nope, I'll use a fork. Now I use that whole can of creamed corn. Now the only thing it's going to do is really extend the cooking time. That's all. So if it says 15 minutes or 35 minutes, in this particular case it says 25 minutes, it'll probably be half an hour. But then I just stir this in and incorporate it so there's no, I don't know, super wet spots. And if you look at that, you can even see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got little clumps of corn in it. It's really kind of sweet. Now, here's the trick. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my pan. And here's the pan I have. It's a 13 by 9, and you gotta spray it down. So it's a little spray oil here. And the trick here now is, my little trick, is to let it sit at least 5 minutes before you put it in the oven. What's that do? Well, that's cornmeal, and cornmeal is a grit. It's not as fine as, say, corn flour or cornstarch, which is the finest. Cornstarch is like, you know, powder. That's what they make baby pepper out of. Obviously, it's cornstarch. But cornmeal is a higher grit, and in order to get that grit really softened and moist, you have to give it some time for the moisture of your recipe to penetrate the little grit kernels themselves. And so if you rush off in a hurry and you don't give it time to do this, then what you get is greedy cornbreads. And then you got to start looking for the butter and the honey, and then you start, you know, wanting to break it up and put it in your stew or your chili or whatever, because it ain't all that. Anyway, so the way to avoid that is just to let this sit. So I'm going to push it out to the corners, and I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes, and then I'm going to put it in a hot oven. This is 400 degrees. It calls for 400 degrees for half an hour, and by then it will rise and turn into so you can take your favorite cornbread recipe, even if your recipe is like in those little Jiffy boxes of corn muffin mix. You can get it one box to one of those small little cans, which is half this size, or you can double it and use this size. It's to die for. It'll totally bump your cornbread up a notch. So I'm going to let this sit, and I'll put it in the oven while my chili continues to cook, and I will be back to play. So, oh, yeah. That is just lovely. Now this cornbread is moist and sweet, and to be honest with you, it doesn't taste any better with butter on it at all. At all. So, goes to show you why I put butter on it. It doesn't need it even a little.
Like this cherry stuff.
And that's all it takes. Can you see that? Lovely. I encourage you to try this. And remember, your favorite flavor you haven't tasted yet.